Mock Draft Monday. But as the more perceptive of you will notice, today is actually Sunday. Giants got crushed today, so it's time for another mock draft. I plan on doing these weekly or bi-weekly, and first, I got beef with bi-weekly. How can it mean both every other week and twice a week? I got to talk to Merriam and Webster, or whoever runs that. But Giants at number 2 now. Cardinals with a win have dropped to 3. Bears at number 1 via Carolina. So it's time for another update. My last update, I think the Cardinals had the number 1 overall pick, and that complicated things. And now things will be a little bit easier. But I'm going to go Caleb Williams at number 1. As I've mentioned so many times throughout this draft season, even dating back to last draft season in 2020, or for the 2023 NFL draft, Drake May would have been the number 1 overall pick last year. Caleb Williams, same deal. Over Bryce Young, who went at 1. Over CJ Stroud, who went at number 2, of course, who's played so well in 2023. Man, he's been so much fun to watch. But both of these quarterbacks are better prospects than both of those quarterbacks were last year. So Drake May, there will be a mock draft where he is the number 1 overall pick. It's just not this week. If the Bears have the number 1 overall pick, I think it's going to be a quarterback or a trade down. Yes, there's a planet where the Bears decide they like Justin Fields and they want to keep developing him and then trade down and get a bunch of picks back for number 1. But there's also a world where they say, hey, how often are we going to be picking number 1 overall? Why try to develop something that I'm not sure if we can develop and take a shot on one of the best quarterback prospects we've seen in quite some time? Drake May, right in that same conversation. He's incredible, and he's had an electric 2023. He is such a great player, and I'm going to have him going here to the Giants at number 2. Again, you could flip these guys. It could go either way. They're both incredible players. Caleb Williams is a little bit better out of the construct of the play, so he's better a little bit improvisationally, whereas Drake May is better timing-wise in the pocket, making reads, making throws, which you can say is a more projectable NFL skill. But they're both very good prospects. At number 3, I think Kyler Murray is going to still be the guy in Arizona. Huge contract, very tough to move on from that. And why bother? We know he's good. Is Kyler Murray ever going to be great? A top 5 quarterback in the league? Who knows? But he's in that top 10 to 15 range very comfortably. And if you continue to develop him, he's still young, and add a dynamic playmaker in one of the best receiver prospects we've seen in the draft in quite some time, the potential starts to become really, really fun. And yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. is not a dynamic threat after the catch, but he does everything else so well, I'm not really even sure it matters that much. He's so great at getting open with his size. He's so great at adjusting to poorly thrown footballs, and he's had to with Kyle McCord at Ohio State. He's so great at going up and winning the 50-50 ball. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a really, really, really good receiver prospect, and I expect him to go inside the top 5. Can't guarantee top 2 or 3, but I think top 5 for sure, as we'll move on to the Patriots at number 4. I have Olu Fashanu here from Penn State. He would have been, same way with these quarterbacks, he would have been the top player at his position last year. Plays tackle for Penn State. Wasn't great against JT Tuimoloau, but has certainly bounced back and is a great tackle prospect. I wouldn't let one game against a very good prospect in his own right kind of skew your perception. He's still a really great player. And for the Patriots, I think you could consider Brock Bowers here, maybe even a big-time playmaking receiver, and there are a lot of them in this draft, which means maybe you don't have to take one in the first round if you don't want to. But Fashanu here, with the combination of aging players, expiring contracts, and poor play, the Patriots just need to take a shot on a very, very good tackle prospect, and that's exactly what Fashanu is. Bears at number 5. I really thought on this for a while. So we have Caleb Williams at number 1. I'm going to end up going Joe Alt. I don't know that there's been a prospect that has kind of like solidified themselves at the top of the class more than Joe Alt this year. And I mean that by saying preseason, there were kind of a number of tackles in play for OT2, right? J.C. Latham from Bama, Amarius Mims from Georgia, who's dealt with injury, but is still a really good tackle prospect in my opinion. There were a number of guys in the mix, even Kingsley Suamataia, Tyler Guyton, Patrick Paul's been great this year, Jordan Morgan. Fatanu's more of an interior offensive line prospect despite playing tackle at Washington. Barton probably projects to guard as well. Talisa Fuaga could be a guard as well, but has been incredible. He's a big draft riser this year. But Joe Alt has been so good at Notre Dame this year. I think he's really solidified himself not only as OT2, but potentially even in that OT1 conversation. So a really good player, and I think for Chicago, try to just get your best 5 on the field. I'm not sure that Braxton Jones at left tackle stops you from drafting Joe Alt inside the top 5. Could be an edge rusher here, for sure, but we're going Joe Alt. Got to protect your young quarterback, and that is Caleb Williams now. Packers at number 6. So the top receivers off the board. We know they're not going to do that anyway. The top 2 quarterbacks are off the board if you don't believe in Jordan Love. And the top 2 tackles now are off the board. So do you go down for a tackle like Latham or Marius Mims or Fuaga even? Or do you pivot? And we're actually going to have them pivot here. And I know they don't take receiver ever. They never do. I haven't done it since 2002 and Javon Walker. However, foolishly, I am going to have them taking a receiver. It's going to be Keon Coleman from Florida State. And I just think he's a great fit for Goody. You know, their GM loves a certain type of player. And when you factor in the height, weight, speed, freak profile that Keon Coleman has, and there is not a better jump ball receiver in the class than Keon Coleman. He's great after the catch as well. He is also an elite receiver prospect. And here he is at number 6. If you're going to truly evaluate Jordan Love, you have to be able to get players around him and develop the entire offense. And Keon Coleman, I think, would help do that. He's a really, really good player. Again, if you're looking for a highlight reel type player, look no further than Keon Coleman. How many 6'4", 215-pound receivers do you know that return punts and do so at a high level? Keon Coleman's a freak and definitely worthy of top 10 consideration, even for a team that does not take first-round receivers. Now might finally be the time to break the mold. Are they going to take a receiver in the 2024 draft? Of course not. But for now, I'm going to have them with a receiver at number 6. Setting the Rams to go Brock Bowers up at number 7. He's an elite tight end prospect. This is a special draft class. It really seems to be. And it's not only just, okay, there's so many good players in here. I think what really kind of puts things into perspective is thinking about it slightly differently, which it's along the same lines, but slightly differently with, oh my goodness, if you're a college football fan, think about all the incredible college football players right now that we don't expect to see next year, whether they're draft eligible or, you know, like whether they're like seniors or underclassmen that can declare, I'll say. There are just so many. How many underclassmen that are not draft eligible can you really name right now that are just absolutely lighting it up? There are a few, don't get me wrong. Luther Burden kind of stands out at Mizzou right now, the receiver. But as far as quarterbacks go, Drew Aller really isn't what we wanted him to be so far. Like Shadur Sanders is draft eligible, and he's a guy that we don't know if he's going to come back or not. Obviously, it's been rumored that he will, but he's draft eligible, so we do include him in these mock drafts. There are not so many guys like Travis Hunter, of course, from Colorado. He's not a guy who's coming out this year. But there's so much talent overall that is almost unquestionably leaving in 2023 to go to the 2024 draft. So that's pretty much my point. A little bit long-winded there. I apologize, but there's just so many special players in this draft class. There's a lot of depth, and there's a lot of top-end talent. Brock Bowers is a special tight end prospect, as I was getting at. He's an elite receiver, and he's very good in the run game as well. He is as perfect as a tight end prospect as you're pretty much going to find, and that's why he ends up being a top 10 player at a position you don't typically see go in the top 10. Titans at number 8, got to upgrade the O-line, and we're going to do that with J.C. Latham from Alabama. Right tackle, plug-and-play starter. Their tackle situation is a mess right now. I actually really like what they have going on in the interior, and I mean, if Peter Skoronski can stay healthy, you have 3 really, really good interior players. Now, you do have a bit of a contract situation at center, but if you can bring him back, you've got a really great combo on the interior. You need to go out and get better tackle play. I mean, Andre Dillard's not it. Maybe Nicholas Petit-Frere can end up being a solid starter at some point, but you got to go out and get at least an upgrade at one of those spots. And Latham, it's a right tackle. Could he play left? We'll see what the Titans would have in mind, but he is a right tackle and a big one at that. He's, I think, about 6'8", 6'7", 340, depending on where you look. I've seen him listed as high as 360. He is strong and he is big. And the Broncos are up at number 9. And I'm going to go Dallas Turner. You know, edge is a big-time need. I think when it's all said and done, Dallas Turner will be the first edge player off the board and probably the first defender. There are a number of other guys like in contention for that spot. I think Chop Robinson probably is the next one off the board. It could be a corner, but I think corner is a little bit tougher to say who's CB1 right now. For me, I think it's going to end up being Nate Wiggins, but you also have Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama. Maybe the best overall DB in the class, in Cooper DeJean. Yes, he's a white corner from Iowa. I get that that's funny, but he's such a good football player. There's nothing funny about that. He is unbelievably talented. He also returns kicks and punts for them, or at least punts. He is a special type of athlete, and I know we don't usually associate that with white corners. This one is a mold-breaking player, for sure. So he still could be. But if I had to bet on it, I would say Dallas Turner is going to be the first defender off the board. At number 10, I am going to have another defender. When I talked about briefly there, it's Chop Robinson from Penn State. Twitchy edge rusher. I mean, he has so much juice off the edge. He is, I tweeted out, like being shot out of a cannon every play. He is just a speed rusher off the edge, and you just can't teach that type of freak athleticism. And that's why these players end up going very high in the draft. I think Chop Robinson ends up being a top 10 guy. And for a team that could use edge rush help, you got some aging players, some expiring contracts as well. Some guys that you think probably aren't going to end up being every down starters for you, like maybe a Zach Harrison. Go out and upgrade. Chop Robinson from Penn State, another Big Ten edge, is the look. He can team up with Arnold Ebiketie, Penn State edge rusher. Kind of a fun storyline there. As we get to the Commanders at number 11, and this is going to be a Marius Mims for me. I thought about an edge rusher here. 2 just got taken right in a row. Depending on how you feel about the edge rushers, there could be another one here. Could be Jared Verse, could be JT Tuinoloau, could be Leatu Latu. And as I've mentioned in every one of these mock drafts, he is my edge 1. I think he is incredible. He is so refined technically and is still a good athlete, but he had to medically retire from football. That just drops you in the draft. He's a little bit older as well. So as talented as he is, there are just a lot of, I don't know if I want to say red flags, although I think you could say medical red flag. It's worked out for Jalen Phillips, similar situation, also had to medically retire from football and is a great player for the Dolphins. I'm not sure how far it's going to drop him in the draft, but I do think he will fall. I love him as a player. And Jared Verse is really good too, just not, he didn't take the jump we expected coming into 2023. Still a great player, but these edge rushers, it'll be really interesting to see where they fall. Anyway, I could very much consider it edge. You know, you talk about the Commanders having the best D-line in the league, or right in that conversation, talent-wise, with Deron Payne, John Allen, Chase Young, Montez Sweat. Well, both of their edge guys are gone now. Could very easily be an edge at number 11, but I am going to go tackle. It's another big need, and Amarius Mims comes in, starts immediately at right tackle, and maybe you could develop him on that left side as well. So right tackle from Georgia has dealt with some injuries this year, but is another huge tackle, similarly to the way that J.C. Latham is built. But Mims, I think, is probably an even better athlete. It's a little bit more of a projection, whereas we've seen it from J.C. Latham. Bucks at 12. I am going with Malik Neighbors from LSU. Mike Evans is a free agent, and Malik Neighbors is a really, really good receiver prospect. I think right up there with Keon Coleman. He's another like yards after catch monster, but also has the speed to win down the field vertically as well. Really, really good receiver prospect. And if you lose Mike Evans, or even if you don't, another great addition to that offense, which I'm all in favor of building around either Baker Mayfield, which seems crazy, but in a class where you lose out on the top 2 quarterbacks, it doesn't really make sense for me to necessarily take one now when you have other needs, and Baker's played well enough, right? I think it's a little bit of a different scenario with the Raiders, where Aiden O'Connell is your best option right now. Jimmy G, I don't know if he's going to end up making the team next year. Could be a cap casualty, and he has certainly not played well enough. Baker's been good with the Bucs, right? But I can't really say the same of Jimmy G and Aiden O'Connell. Like, there's potential there to be a starter maybe at some point, but he's probably just going to be a career backup, which is still a great job. could end up being a good starter as well. Sometimes it's all about, offensive coordinator installing a great offense, putting you in position to succeed. Look at Brock Purdy with the Niners. He's got a little bit of an ick factor to him, right? But we'll see if Aiden O'Connell has that. Anyway, I'm going to say it's not going to stop you from taking a quarterback. We're going to go J.J. McCarthy from Michigan, and here is why. Could be a guy that goes back to school, by the way. He is incredibly talented. He's very mobile, has great speed, can extend plays, and has a big-time arm. The arm talent's incredible. He has shown the ability to go through progressions, even though he doesn't always, sometimes locked in on that first target. But he's also able to get rid of the football and not overthink it when his first read is open. Now, people are hating on J.J. McCarthy. He tweeted out, bet, once Harbaugh got suspended and isn't going to be on the sideline, essentially, and everyone tweets out bet. And it's like, okay, J.J. McCarthy's coming to play. This was going to be the first big game against Penn State where he could really, truly evaluate him against a top talent. And what happened? They didn't really let him throw. And I don't know that says as much about J.J. McCarthy as some of you want it to. Their right tackle, when they dropped back to pass early, got cooked against Chop Robinson. And do you want that to happen the whole game? Or do you just play to your strength, say, hey, O-line, go push the defensive line up the field, run block the entire game, and let our two NFL running backs in Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum just annihilate the Penn State defense? That's exactly what happened. Is it that J.J. McCarthy can't throw? Well, he went, 7 for 8 for 60 yards? It's not that he was unable to make these throws and unable to throw. It's just he said, why bother when we can run the ball down their throat and win the game, continue our perfect season, and not risk anything bad happening against what was looking to be an elite pass rush that day. They completely neutralized the pass rush. Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac just couldn't really do much when they're running the ball every single play. So I don't know that J.J. McCarthy is a worse prospect because he only had 8 pass attempts and completed 7 of them. He's still a good prospect. It's still a bit of a question mark, but the tools are there, and we see quarterbacks with elite tools get drafted high all the time. That's what J.J. McCarthy is. We'll see if he goes back to school. We'll see if he comes out. It'll be a big storyline over this offseason, I'm sure. But bottom line is, he's got tools. He's got those traits that get quarterbacks drafted high all the time. We'll see what happens. But he is a good prospect. I don't know why people are saying he sucks. Wouldn't be my Heisman pick, but he's definitely not bad. And his best football could be ahead of him based on those traits and tools that we talked about. Number 14, have the Chargers going with a corner. And as I said, Nate Wiggins is probably going to end up being my CB1. He's got the elite size, moves really well for that size. Everything I liked about Christian Gonzalez, you can say the same of Nate Wiggins. Elite size and length with the arms, and also an elite mover in space. You wouldn't know he's 6'2", 200 pounds based on the way he moves. So those type of guys as well get drafted high. And I think Nate Wiggins has a really good shot to be the first corner off the board. I was really happy when I watched him in the offseason with how well he was playing and the way he moved in space. And elite traits for a corner. Really, really like the player. And I think, again, will be drafted highly. Now, when's the first corner go off the board? Is it top 10? Is it top 15 like we have here? We'll have to see. But teams are always going to need corners to run with these receivers. And when you have an elite receiver class, going to need some corners to cover them. Chargers certainly do need cornerback help. J.C. Jackson is not what you expected. He's already on another team after a big free agent signing. Colts at number 15. Going back-to-back corners here, or am I? I'm going Cooper DeJean from Iowa. I think there's a chance he's the best overall DB in the class. And can he stick a corner? I think so. I really do. Now, can he make more of an impact as a nickel player? I also think that's the case. I think the slot corner position is the most undervalued position in football right now, more than running back, more than, your typical safety or linebacker. I think based on all of these 3 wide receiver sets, if you have a corner that can cover, run with those slot receivers, but also make a big impact in run defense, that's a perfect player. And why are guys like Brian Burns falling all the way down the board when they can make a massive impact? I do not get it. Now, DeJean is someone that maybe you're projecting to play slot corner or safety. He plays on the boundary. He's very good there. I think he can stick there. The Colts need help there. And really all across their secondary, you could argue, except for the slot, because they have Kenny Moore. but I don't think it matters. When he can stick on the boundary or slide back to safety, I think you have a versatile DB that you can move around and can play an impact in a number of different roles, and that's when a defense gets truly elite. You don't know where guys are going to line up. You don't know how they're going to attack you. I think DeJean's a great fit in Indianapolis. Jets at 16. Going Rome Odunze. Another awesome receiver prospect. Height, weight, speed freak, get down the field, catch the football. There's very few that are as good at that as Rome Odunze. Lit it up at Washington with Michael Penix this year. Continues to play really well. It's going to be fun to see if Washington ends up getting into the college football playoff. More eyes on college football is always a great thing. I love college football. I wish some of you shared that same emotion. And I'm going to tell you, when people watch the Washington offense for the first time, they're going to have a lot of fun. Because with the combination of Michael Penix, Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, a healthy Jalen McMillan, that offense is a ton of fun. Get down the field, a number of different playmakers, and Rome Odunze, I think, is the best of the bunch. I think he's going to be the first taken. At number 17, have the Bills, who also need cornerback help, went out, traded for Rasul Douglas at the trade deadline, and now help that group again with Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama. Preseason CB1, I still think I'm going to end up liking Nate Wiggins a little bit more when it's all said and done. I think he's a better athlete. McKinstry's really good, though. Another one of these long corners. Don't think he's quite as athletic, but long arms, can get his hands into you and can still run with guys down the field. He's going to be probably a top 20 pick, I would bet. And for a team that kind of missed on Kaiir Elam, I think you don't want to do that again. You want to take someone that you know can really play the position, and that is Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama. At number 18, I have the Bengals doing what I've had them doing for a while now. I'm sorry, I'm not going to mix it up. I'm going Jerzon, Johnny Newton. He is another really fun player. Now, is he special in the way that we talked about with like a unicorn like Brock Bowers, the same way we got Kyle Pitts comparisons or any of these quarterbacks? I'm not sure that he is. He's an undersized interior defensive lineman, but he's got so much juice. He's able to even rush off the edge, turn the corner, make plays. He is a penetrator. I know that's a funny saying, but oh my goodness, does this guy live in the backfield? He can defend the run, but he is an elite pass rusher. And this is kind of the same range where we saw a very similar player go last year out of Pitt to the Buccaneers. And Jerzon Newton from Illinois, I think, could be in the same range. And oh my goodness, is he fun to watch. Undersized, short arms. I don't really think it matters. Got a lot of juice as a pass rusher. He's super fun to watch. Saints at 19. Considered a quarterback here. I'm going to end up going a different direction. I think I had a QB last week or 2 weeks ago when we did the mock draft. Going Emeka Egbuka. I think you can kind of forget about him with the injuries this year. And I'm guilty of this as well. When I was, tearing out my receivers just in a random tweet, Emeka Egbuka kind of slipped my mind for a minute, and he's still a really good receiver prospect. And I think it's kind of the way we feel about a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba. It's almost eerily similar. A really good receiver prospect, banged up at Ohio State, doesn't really play as much, could be overshadowed by some other guys, even at their own school. But here we are. Comes draft time, Emeka Egbuka, I think, is going to be back in that mix to be one of the first receivers off the board, and he is a really, really fun player. Probably a slot receiver, but could be a really nice addition to an offense with Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed as a deep threat, and Emeka Egbuka eating up targets in the middle of the field. And you could still even double dip on the position down the board. There are a number of big outside receivers that might be available to you. Probably don't take a receiver with your first two picks, but Johnny Wilson, Adonai Mitchell, even Xavier Legette, certainly not lacking in size. Brian Thomas in that same vein. There are a number of big-time receivers down the board that if you're looking for a more traditional chain mover, you can find it. None bigger than Oronde Gadsden from Syracuse, but we'll have to see where he ends up going. Certainly not in the mix to be a first-rounder. Cardinals at number 20. I have them going with Jared Verse. Again, I've hyped up Leatu Latu a lot. Why am I taking another edge rusher? I think I explained it pretty well already with the injury history of Latu. Verse is someone that was awesome last year. Why does he keep falling in these mock drafts? He's been good. He just has not been super elite, has not taken a huge step up the way we kind of wanted to see. And Is he still going to be a first-round pick? I feel pretty good about it. He's a good athlete with really powerful hands. He is a pure power rusher with athleticism, and those players just typically do go in the first round. He just hasn't been as dominant as you would want, but he's still a very good prospect, and I think worthy of a top 20 selection. Could go with something on the interior here. It's just you don't really have the players right now. Like, I'm not sure that any of these guys have really played as well as you would want of someone to go in the top 20. Like Leonard Taylor, Chris Jenkins, Mason Smith, all good athletes, but have not really been as amazing as you would want to see from a player going inside the top 20. And they're good, but they're more projection than what they've shown this year, whereas a guy like Johnny Newton is only showing you production and good stuff on film. So I don't know that there's going to be 2 interior defensive linemen taken in the first round. There certainly could be, but the only one I feel good about right now is Johnny Newton from Illinois. Vikings at 21. You may be losing Kirk Cousins. He's a free agent, big-time injury. Maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. We're going Shadur Sanders from Colorado. He might end up going back to Colorado. For sure could. Dion said he's coming back. I don't know that he's coming back, though. Can't say for certain. So people are kind of down on Shadur now, think he was getting overhyped. He's not. Still a really good player. His offensive line is absolutely atrocious. He needs more help. If you see him playing behind a real offensive line like what the Vikings have with 2 elite tackles, trust me, you're going to be really happy with what you see from Shadur Sanders. Feel good about that. At number 22, we have the Dallas Cowboys. And for the Cowboys, I think you got to address receiver. Now, CeeDee Lamb is a beast, obviously, and there are some other positions you could think about as well. Offensive line, absolutely in play. Absolutely in play. Absolutely. But Michael Gallup, I don't love. Brandon Cooks, aging. Still good, but maybe more of a complimentary guy at this point in time. But if you can go out and get a big-time receiver like Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, I think you at least consider it. There's been few guys that have kind of had a rise like Brian Thomas Jr. has this year, as much as he has. He's been unbelievable. And you go from maybe a guy you'd consider drafting to a guy you consider drafting in the first round. He's a big-time deep threat with the ability to go up and get the football in the air. Oh my goodness, has he been a fun player to watch. And I think the Cowboys could use more weapons on offense. It's not really just CeeDee Lamb. And you have some other nice players. Brian Thomas Jr. can end up being a really good one. Is that more of a need than going out and, replacing, Tyron Smith long-term? Or not having to start Terrence Steele? Maybe it's not. Could end up being a tackle here next time around. But for right now, I'm going receiver, and Brian Thomas Jr. is a really fun player I wanted to shine a light on. Joey Porter Jr. has been amazing for the Steelers. What a first-round pick almost that he was. I think he was number 32, but because the Dolphins forfeited that pick, ended up being in the second round, if I recall. Well, he's played every bit like a first-rounder, and you can't really say the same of the other cornerbacks on the Steelers. So I think you can go out, get a corner in the draft, you'd feel pretty good about it. And I think maybe the best one, another draft riser, is Terrion Arnold from Alabama. Another guy that's got the size, got the tenacity for the position like you look for with corner more than any other, maybe offensive line as well. And he is a good athlete. But yeah, he's got that dog in him. He's a really fun player to watch. And I think someone that could end up firmly in the first round. And for a team that needs help at corner, Terrion Arnold from Alabama seems like a good as fit as any. Texans at 24. CJ Stroud's been unbelievable. But you need to go out and get him some weapons. But you also need to solidify the other side of the ball. If you're going to win, you need your defense to step up. And I like what they have on the edge right now. Will Anderson Jr. is a beast. I like Jonathan Grenard. But who knows if he's going to be there long term. With Laiatu Latu falling in the draft, I think you take him here at 24. He's my favorite edge rusher in the class. And because of the injury, having to medically retire, he's going to have some red flags maybe and drop. But I think the player is so good. Hope a team takes a chance on him. And I'm really excited to see where it is that he actually ends up. Dolphins at 25. You need tackle badly. Unfortunately, Teron Armstead has not really necessarily been reliable. Injury have injuries have kind of gotten to him his entire career, and not much has changed. But you also could use help on the other side. So whether you want to take a right tackle like Talisa Fuaga, or a left tackle like someone like, Jordan Morgan, they have options. But I'm going to end up going Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. Played really well. He was a TCU transfer, and definitely an upgrade on the offensive line. Seahawks at 26. We're finally going to take the first interior offensive lineman. Their tackles are great for the future. Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross. I think you like those guys. Had great rookie seasons, but you need more help. However, why am I going to the tackles? Well, Troy Fautanu probably projects to the interior, whether that's guard or maybe even center, depending on who you ask. I have not watched Troy Fautanu this year. Offensive line is usually not a position I get to for a while, except for the guys that I got to in the summer scouting. But Fautanu, by all accounts, seems to be the best interior offensive lineman in this class. And for Seattle, you could use an upgrade across really your entire interior of your O-line. And Fautanu could end up fitting the bill. Niners at 27. I'm going with Talisa Fuaga. He is a big-time mauler in the run game. I heard his name kind of get hyped up maybe a month or so ago, went and watched him, and he is fun to watch. This is, for everyone that goes out and says offensive line's boring, this is not a fun pick. If you go and watch him at Oregon State, he is fun to watch. He is a mauler in the run game, and not a bad pass protector either. Really, really fun tackle prospect. Has probably been the biggest riser, maybe tied with some other guys throughout this draft season. He's had a phenomenal year for Oregon State. Really, really good player. As we get to the Jags at 28. And for the Niners, you could use help on the offensive line, and even with having the best left tackle in football, Trent Williams, he's closer to 40 than he is to 30, or even 35, I think. So Fuaga can be an upgrade or a future replacement. Jags at 28. I'm going JT Tuimoloau. I think he's going to end up getting more hype as we go through the season. He just continues to produce. He's a good player. He made life hell for Olu Fashanu when Penn State played Ohio State. He's a really good player. And I think someone that ends up in the first round, if not, maybe slipping out. I think he's a top 40 player, but we'll have to see what happens. Might not end up being true. But the Jags might lose Josh Allen in free agency. Obviously, someone you want to bring back. But you could also use help at the other edge spot as well. Trayvon Walker's good, but you can move him around. He continues to develop, but if you lose Josh Allen, you're going to need an upgrade for sure on the other side. So JT Tuimoloau ends up being the pick from Ohio State. As we get to the Ravens at 29. For me, I think it's corner or interior defensive line. Could go at least consider an edge as well. I like Owe. I'd like to think that David Ojabo is going to end up being really good, but you need an upgrade on the interior. And I think probably the best one at this point is Rook Orororo. Very fun name to say for some of you. And I feel like Scooby-Doo. But Rook played really well for Clemson last year and has pretty much picked up right where he left off in 2023. This is one of those guys where you wonder, okay, he's playing next to Brian Brzee and a bunch of NFL defensive linemen. How good is he really? Turns out, still really good. I think he's going to be one of those names that ends up getting at least first-round hype in a weaker interior defensive line class. And for a team that definitely needs an upgrade on the interior, Rook could be that guy. Now, Justin Madubuike has played as well as pretty much any interior defensive lineman in the league, not named like Dexter Lawrence or Aaron Donald or, maybe even Chris Jones. But Madubuike is getting into that top conversation. He's been entirely productive, and he's played really, really well, even production aside. So he's great, but he's a free agent. Got to bring him back, and even with bringing him back, could still use an upgrade next to him as well. So Rook Orororo ends up being the pick here out of Clemson. Orororo. I'm sorry. Lions at 30. I'm going with a corner. Need help on the boundary. Kalen King, I think, ends up getting into the first round. If not, I think he's just on the outside, but has not really played so well of late, and that's against Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, a lot of guys struggle with a matchup like that. But also, I felt like he got exposed on one of the few pass plays that Michigan even had in that game. So I wonder what his stock ends up being. I'm going with Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia here. He's played pretty much as well as any corner in the class this year, and I think he could end up being a first-round pick for sure. To the Lions that could use help on the boundary long term. Chiefs at 31. I'm going with my guy, Adonai Mitchell from Texas, A.D. Mitchell. He is a big-bodied receiver with great movement skills for his size. He gets open. He just doesn't get the football enough. However, he still managed to score a touchdown in like each of his last 7 games somehow. He's been incredibly productive even if the yards aren't there on a consistent basis. It's because the targets aren't there, and accurate targets if Malik Murphy is the quarterback. But Adonai Mitchell is a really, really fun prospect. I think he's going to end up getting more and more hype as the draft process goes on. He's got really good hands. His deep ball tracking's good. He's going to end up being one of these draft risers as well. If you guys watched my way too early mock draft from 6 months ago, I was really aggressive with his ranking based on what I saw at Georgia when he was on the field and not hurt. Had him at, I think, number 14. I still think he gets into the first round, and the Chiefs at 31 would be a great fit. Yes, you have Rashee Rice. I don't know what you can expect of Sky Moore. Does anyone? Kadarius Toney, same deal. Like, Nicole Hardman, not really any of those guys playing the position that Adonai Mitchell would, which is, honestly, your X-receiver. Throw Rashee Rice as your Z, get any one of those guys I talked about earlier in the slot, and then Travis Kelce can still be the guy for as long as you have him. And this could still even be another Texas player, Jatavion Sanders, or if you're looking for a deep threat, another Texas player, Xavier Worthy. A lot of options. And oh my goodness, speaking of Texas players, I do want to say how sad I am. Jonathan Brooks has been as good as any running back in the country this year. Finally a starter, and unfortunately last night tore his ACL in the TCU game. And it's just devastating, dude. So get well soon, Jonathan Brooks. Probably ends up back at Texas in 2024, which selfishly as a fan, I'd love to see him back. But obviously, you know, you feel terrible for the person, Jonathan Brooks, who by all accounts is just an awesome guy and was maybe in the mix to be the first running back off the board, and now probably not so much with the torn ACL. So get well soon, and I wish him luck with whatever he decides going forward, whether that's the draft or heading back to Texas. Really awesome guy by all accounts, and certainly a fantastic player. And yeah, just sucks. Eagles at 32. I think this could be a number of different positions. Could be receiver. If you want a deep threat, you know, you have a bunch of options. Xavier Worthy, Jalen Polk, Xavier Legette. Ladd McConkey is really good. He's got a really funny name. He's a white receiver, but he's really, really good. I know there's some stigmas. Oh, he's a Patriots-type player, right? But make no joke. Ladd McConkey is a really, really, really good player. He's a great route runner. He's a really good athlete. He could end up being in the first round conversation. So it'll be fun to see where he ends up going. But for the Eagles, I'm going to address the offensive line. A number of really good ones. Graham Barton, probably a guard at the NFL level. Patrick Paul does not allow anyone to beat him in pass pro. Kingsley Suamataia could have done better against teams like Texas. That's the one game I've watched of him so far in 2023. It'll be interesting to see where he goes, but good athlete, somebody I watched in 2022, or I guess 2023 of the 2022 season, and I thought he was going to end up being pretty good. Little disappointing so far in 2023 based on his Texas tape, but we'll see when the season's over what he ends up looking like. Patrick Paul's been elite, and Jordan Morgan from Arizona has been very good, and could have gone high last year if he declared, and I am going to take him here to the Eagles at 32. The Eagles are great, and part of the reason they're great is their offensive line is amazing. How long is Lane Johnson going to play? That's going to be a question that we have yet to answer and may not answer for a season or two, or maybe sooner than that. He could end up retiring. He's old at this point. He was in, what? Was he the 2011 draft? 2012? 2013? Either way, it's been a long time. I think he's about 34 years old. So it's been a long, long career for Lane Johnson. He could still end up playing for 4 more years, but you have to prepare for a life after him. And Jordan Morgan is that guy for right now. If you're looking for a guard, maybe a guy like Graham Barton that we talked about could be in play as well. But that is the Mock Draft Monday on a Sunday, and I will see you in the next one. Subscribe for more mock drafts, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.